copying a couple of links into the chat, one for Anton Bauer's Salty Dog and one for PERG's sustainability page, which came about earlier this year when we started doing some coffee breaks on this subject. And there's a bunch of resources on that page, and we're going to want to keep adding to them. So well, welcome to check them out. Well, I guess let's get started. We are expecting more people to join us, but let's get this party started. So welcome and thanks for joining us today. We're excited to continue PERG's series on sustainability with this presentation by Anton Bauer about their new product and its role in creating a more sustainable source of set power. There we go. So today's presentation is the future of power with Anton Bauer. Before we get going on it, let me thank our sponsors. These are the annual sponsors that support everything that PERG does. We're very grateful. They make things like this possible. They are Anton Bauer, ARRI, Astera, Camera One, Dual-Close Lenses, Dynamic, Light Gear, Panavision, Taylor & Taylor, the Camera Division, and Zeiss Lenses. All right. So at Cine Gear this year, Anton Bauer unveiled a new product aimed at providing a source of set power that provides the crew with greater flexibility and can be used as a way to reduce the production's carbon footprint based on its use of sodium-based battery chemistry, something that I have not seen before. It is therefore named the Salty Dog. It's my pleasure to introduce Anton Bauer's product manager for batteries, Andrew Hutton, to tell us about their technology and how it fits with production's goals of greater sustainability. Let me stop sharing.
Thank you very much for that, Harry. I'll share my screen, so hopefully you'll be able to see the presentation quite shortly. Start up. I'm joined today on the call by Dave Pascoe, who's the head of our engineering, and also Paul Dudek. He's got a very long title, which is the VP of Global Business Development, Innovations, Sales. So without further ado, we will start to get into this. And if at any time you have any questions, please do not be afraid to ask away. We're here to answer anything and everything that you can try and bring up. But here we go. So we'll start a little bit on why Anton Bauer and who we are. I'm sure most of you may or may not know us, but we've been around in the industry for over 52 years now. We've been at the forefront of the industry, developing many innovations in this time, which has earned us an Emmy and Oscar for Outstanding Science and Engineering. We created the gold medal system. We also have done the PTAP connector and the very handy fuel gauge, which can be seen in the viewfinder. So these are just some of the innovations which we've been working on, and the innovation hasn't stopped. In reality, we are always looking to try new things, lead the way in different areas to help make life out on set and behind the camera as easy as possible. We've got a very simple sort of mission, which is we're trying to be more sustainable. We do pretty much operate with lithium-based cells on our onboard cameras, and we all know there are issues around lithium, and we're here to hold our hands and say, look, we know there are issues, but we have always been trying to mitigate some of the environmental impact of these. Do this from using some premium cells and very high grade, even military grade components in our batteries, which means the batteries can cycle for longer, which means they last longer, which means you don't have to buy as many, which has further impacts further down the supply chain with delivery, manufacturing, using raw materials, etc., etc. This all rolls up into being able to reduce your carbon emissions. And lately, it's become very apparent that ESG has been, from like 5 years ago, a desire. Now it's almost the #1 thing which a lot of companies have to think about before they even start production. So there's more sustainability officers now than there's ever been, and they're going to just keep on increasing and increasing, as many productions rightly so look to remove as many carbon emissions, NOx emissions, reduce the waste of water, food, etc., as we start to move forward, which kind of leads us on to where we're starting to go with our new technology. Because as we all know, as the sets get greener, the things on the sets still do remain the same as the biggest propagator, which really is fuel. Now, most fuel generators are increasingly being used on set, as even though electronics becomes more efficient, people use more and more electronics, be that cameras, laptops, lights, heaters, you name it. People want to plug it in, they want to use it because they want that sort of home comfort for themselves, for talent, or just to get the job done. And whilst everything else has become greener, that then means the emissions caused by using fuel has become higher and higher on all productions, be they small, where they make up 56%, or even on the tent poles where they make up 48%. So I'm sure everyone on this call knows this situation very clearly. You have one very big generator normally on set, which is then cabled up, goes out to your spider boxes, your distro boxes, your splitters, you name it. It goes 400 meters, a kilometer away through cabling, and it ends up at the actual piece of equipment that it's actually running. It's a very expensive setup, not just in equipment cost, but also in the time it takes to do this. On top of this way of working, there's a very loud generator pumping away, and if you're anywhere in the public, I think we all know how much the people in towns hate hearing this. You then have the smell that it creates, so it's not just audible, it's also that you can normally smell a generator sometimes before you can see it. And then it's just the fact that for every litre burnt, you are producing 2.6 kilograms of CO2 and 40 grams of NOx, which is 300 times worse than CO2. Tends to get ignored a bit, but we have to start taking all of this into account as we move forward now. It's become very apparent from all of the key stakeholders that there has to be a different way. So we have been looking, and these are some of the alternatives that are really the main players. So we have diesel, which has been the mainstay since generators existed. But for ESG reasons, that has to be slowly, and I do mean slowly, it's being deselected. You know, there's some things that a diesel or fuel generator can do that others can't, but that's starting to change. So people are now looking at biofuels. Now this still results in CO2 and other emissions being emitted. Some argue that because it can come from biomass, the growing of it pulls out the CO2, so it shouldn't be counted. Then others argue, well, you still have to use fertilizers, transport it, refine it, etc. So it's contentious, but it is an option that is being pushed out there. We then have hydrogen. I'll be honest, I think hydrogen's amazing. It really does need an automotive manufacturer to get behind it, because most hydrogen on the market is still coming from a biofuel or fossil fuel, so it's a byproduct of a fossil fuel. And it comes under names of brown, blue, etc. The only true hydrogen is a green hydrogen. It's still very much in its infancy. The costs are quite expensive, and some people are worried about the safety aspects around it also. And then we have what everyone thinks is the solution, which is lithium. Now, we all know there's a dirty secret with lithium, and that is the environmental impact it has in the background. It can take up to 2 million tons of water, or litres of water, sorry, just to produce 1 ton of lithium. And that either is drawn straight from the local ground source, or it's put straight back into the local ground source without actually being cleaned up, which then has devastating effects further on downstream. And that's before we even think about the cobalt effect, which is the most used cathode material in lithium batteries. But on top of the environmental impacts it also has an incredibly bad human rights impact as well, which is why in the battery industry we tend to call it the blood element. So we have been looking at other alternatives, as always, because there has to be a better way forward, a greener way forward, as we're being pushed by all of our customers and stakeholders, and we think there is one. And that is really what gave birth to the salty dog. Now, the sodium sustainable power supply, or BESS system, as some people obviously may call it, was designed to address a lot of the issues that have been raised now, because people want to start moving away from fuel generators as quickly as they can, but they want to make sure that what they're moving to is, again, a sustainable green solution. Now, we believe that the sodium salty dog does start to address all of these issues, and it takes a big chunk of CO2 and NOx out when it's being used on set. Now, there are obviously larger battery generators out there. Majority of these are all lithium based, so that's a lithium ion or lithium iron phosphate. They obviously have the same issue. They're still both lithium. They're still taking raw virgin materials, and it's adding to the issue that we have seen, and it's growing and growing and growing. So we think a safer solution is to use sodium. I'll tell you why in a slide or so, some of the natural benefits that it has. And it is very cost effective compared to the fuel generators and requires no active maintenance. So you don't have to have a maintenance plan, you don't need a mechanic, you don't need a Jenny boy or fuel person or any of those type of things anymore. Obviously things change, and it operates at a far higher efficiency at any load. Now, most fuel generators operate between, say, 50 and 70% efficiency. As we know, most fuel generators are used roughly around 20% most of the time. So there's 80% of all of this energy and byproduct going to waste. And there's been a little bit of a scramble in the industries because in 2028, California is banning the sale of new gas generators. Doesn't mean the big ones. It's starting with small, but as we know, as soon as you start to ban something small, you've got your targets going to be in the medium and the high ones. So we're just trying to help people get ahead of the game on this. So why a sodium nickel battery? Well, sodium is one of the most abundant elements on Earth. At worst, you can pull it from seawater. You can get 10.8 grams per liter out of desalinization. So if you had a desalinization plant, you could produce battery material and clean water. Would make sense. I'm sure someone will do it someday. Because it's in abundance everywhere, it can be produced anywhere. So you're not relying on the main mining markets of Australia, Bolivia, to then have that raw material manufactured and processed in China and then shipped from there globally. So our footprint on manufacturing the battery is far smaller, as there are factories producing this in our American and European markets. So we're already starting to try and attack the front end of this problem as well. Now, obviously, we've produced a 9 kilowatt system here, and that is what it looks like. It does look very pretty, I have to admit. And some of the other advantages of this and why we think this is the green solution is it is really a zero impact sort of battery. It doesn't have any rare earth materials. Everything in it is 100% recyclable, and that is part of the system as well. It comes with that ability where we will click the battery and recycle it for you. The other main advantage is its safety. It is intrinsically safe. It's electromechanically safe. You can put a nail through this and it will work. One of the tests we have done, which was the nail puncher test, it let out some venting and it just carried on working. So there's no chance of thermal runaway. It has a very, very long life cycle capability. So after 4,500 cycles, there's still 80% of the capacity of the cell left. So if you were using this battery, the salty dog, once a day and recharging it as well, you're going to look around 12.5 years before you get to this 4,500 cycle life. It's a long time, however you look at it from a battery's point of view. It's a very, very reliable technology as well. Now, it has never had the headlines that lithium or some of the other chemistries have had too recently, but it has been out and been used in many markets, mainly military, for a long time, where they used to have them mounted on nuclear warheads, which goes to show just how safe it is, because the last thing you want is an explosion or a fire happening on one of those. We've also made this as compact and portable as possible. It's very, very easy to maneuver and push around. When this has been used out on set, it has been quieter than the actual camera fan that was being used to shoot also. We've had some audio people come up to it, put their ears next to it, and they said they couldn't really hear it, which is the whole point. We don't want people to hear it. We've designed this specifically for this industry. You know, film and TV, this is what we do, this is what we've known to do, and this is what we're trying to address. So it has many different inputs and outputs that we think are needed. And it comes with a nice lifetime or 5-year warranty on it. Now, after that 5 years, there is an option to buy an extended warranty if needs be, but 5 years warranty as a standard is quite unusual. But we believe in our design that much that we have no issue putting that against it. As I said, we've been obviously in this industry a long time. We didn't just rush out to build something. So we've been working with quite a wide customer set. These are just a few of the customers whom we've been working with and gaining their feedback to ensure that the product we bring out is the right product for this market and addresses all of the key points that they have actually got. Again, these are just a few, but you can see the names there are all well known to us all, and people liked it from different aspects, be it the safety, the green messaging, just the fact that it can enable you to quickly set up shots, get shooting before you even get the main generator in, so you can get more flexibility out on set. And these are the sort of key points that a lot of stakeholders have brought up as the main reasoning. Now, also, you will get a copy of this slide set later, so I won't go through this comparison because I'm sure everybody on this call knows this. All of the big advantages and disadvantages of switching across. No real disadvantage in reality. It does what it does. It does it cleanly, it does it quietly, and more importantly, it's designed to save not just CO2 and NOx emissions, but also the cash side of it. You can see that just by switching away from, say, a 12 kilowatt diesel generator and moving across to using a salty dog on production, and these are the calculations, so we stand behind all of this, you can save a year 11,804 kilograms of CO2, which is a whopping amount. And then on the NOx, 222 kilograms. Of course, times that by 300, that's a lot of bad emissions removed from the local environment, which also then helps you on the cost side because you're not paying, when I last checked, this was the cost of diesel in the US, a lot of money just to refill the actual generator. The cost savings on ours, obviously, if you refilled it, or recharged it, I should say, is astronomical. You can see the difference. It's nearly $7,000 cheaper per year just to run this. That's before you remove or add on the maintenance costs of a fuel generator and the maintenance person, etc., etc. So the base cost savings are quite high, but as soon as you look at all the other hidden cost savings, it becomes an even bigger cost saving for the customer and the person on set. So you're probably thinking, well, all right, this sounds very good, but what are the specifications? So these are the specs. We've designed this to be used in most weather. You know, it is IP55, so it's pretty weather resistant. It's better than most of the fuel gens out there at this time. It comes with a very nice 7-inch touchscreen display, which is real-time data. This would tell you how long you've got left, what power you're pulling from which one of the outputs, and it gives you all of the telemetrics, which you can then use to work out your CO2 savings. Has 10-inch punch-proof tires, so very easy to maneuver around, and you don't have to worry about pushing it around on any sort of rough terrain. As I said, it's got 6,000 watt output, and that is across the entire temperature range. This isn't, oh, at 30 C, suddenly the temperature will start to derate. No, we've tested this to the absolute hilt. It's very compact. You guys work in inches, so it's 29.5 inches wide. So that is a lot thinner than the standard door frame, so it can get in and out of any internals. It has a height of 52 inches and also a depth of 39.4. So it's quite small. It also has the roll cage design. Now that's purposely on there because we know anything on set normally gets hammered. So this is designed to take a bit of a beating, and it can also carry a milk crate on the top of it as well. So you can put your cables in or some other little piece of equipment and wheel it around. Kind of dual purpose, a nice little touch. But what it's really designed for is on the outputs. So we have regional models, US, UK, and Europe. They all come with 4 AC outputs, which are dedicated to that area. They then have 4 XLR3 outputs at 28 volts, 16 amps, and then 4 XLR3 outputs at 48 volts, 16 amps. So you can do your cameras, your lights, straight 5 the XLR, so you can get away with removing the PSU or ballast systems as well. On top of that, you've got two USB-Cs, which I'm sure everyone will use for their mobile phones, laptops, whatever piece of equipment they've got hanging around, because if there's a plug, someone will plug something in. It's that simple when it's outset. So it does enable that use as well. And then we have in the US, the Bates connector, a 50 amp Bates connector. In Europe, it's a C-form 32 amps connector. On the inputs as well, we're trying to be very flexible. So we have a mains US, UK, or EU, which goes into the IEC. But we've also included a solar PV input, an EV level 2 charging input, and a PowerCon True 1 input. So wherever you are, you should be able to get a charge in this from one of those options. If we then take a little closer look at the inputs as well, you can see it's nice and clean. It's been properly thought out to be ergonomically available for people just to put the cables in, not have a mess of cables anywhere. And I think the EV level 2 is something which everybody does tend to love, I have to say. And then we have on the outputs, again, very clean. Again, on the Europe one, that's Bates connector will turn to a C-form, but that is the only difference along with the AC plugs. So we have our banks of connectors, which are all nicely shown up on the main controls displays here, where you can also toggle the DC outputs on and off if you wish. And underneath the service port, where you can do firmware upgrades, you can also pull out all the telemetrics via a USB. There will be an app coming at some point where you'll be able to connect via a GUI and also grab the data that way. And the LED screen itself is very clean. We try to make it as clean and big as possible, because we know the easier you can make someone's job on set, the easier take up there is out in the market on these type of equipment. So it will change as per real time information is shown. It'll also show you what's being pulled, be it on the AC plug, the XLR3 at 48 or at 28 volts. So you should always have the most up-to-date information to enable you to run your equipment with confidence. And I did touch on it earlier, how portable it is. And that's what we've designed it for. So we have natural hoisting points in case you do need to lift it up somewhere. It can also be moved around by a forklift or pallet truck. And we have also designed a custom braking system, which is shown in the bottom right. And we test that to a medical standard. So that will hold the unit at a 10-degree angle with no problems whatsoever. So last thing you want is this thing rolling away, because it does weigh a little bit, like all the big battery systems do, but we've ensured that that can't happen. We then have a couple of little examples of some of the lights and equipment that it does actually run with the runtimes. Now, I know people aren't going to use this just to run one light, but it does just highlight the sort of runtimes and ability. And you can probably see there, it also says 18 kilowatt. That would be where we're looking to go to next. Once the 9 has been finished, we move on to the 18, and then it depends on what the market desires, be that a 50, a 150, a 1.4 megawatt. We can pretty much do whatever needs to be done. We just need to hear back from the market where they think the pain point is that we need to address. But you can see it will run a video village for well over 11 hours, or a whole set of lights. So like the Sky Panel S60s for 2 hours 15. And you can probably see on this got the ARRI M8, the ARRI M18, but the real game changer and challenge that we were given by ARRI at the very beginning of this project a year ago was, can it run an ARRI M40? And yes, it can. So the little 9 can run it for an hour and 38 on full power, and the 18s can run it for even over 3 hours or over 6 hours. So more than enough from what ARRI have said. They've been quite amazed by the ability of this, and they love it. And people like the fact you can quickly move this, set it up, get your shot going, not worry about the cables, which might arrive an hour or two later. So you are saving all of that production spend. And when production spends can be up to $10,000 a minute, being able to maximize your production film is a big money saver for everyone. Now, we have had this out on set. and we've got quite a bit of feedback really, and it's still coming in all the time. We had it at HBO, which is now called Max. It's not just first called Max up there, that is definitely HBO. And their crew said they think it will replace the Honda 7000, which I think is quite a stamp of endorsement, really. Some of the other feedback was they loved not having to have cable runs set everywhere, the ability to quickly change a shot, a location, put it in position, move it, not worry about doing all of the admin when it comes to licensing and getting it into a town center. It gives you that pure flexibility, and it's been used by every department in any and every way you can imagine, including steam cleaning clothes and running heaters for talent. So it's not a niche product that is held in just one little area where you say it's going to do lights, this can do anything. In reality, it's because this we see as being the workhorse out in the industry, and the first one before we start to move up, of course. Everyone then always asks pricing, and we have nothing to hide behind this. You know, we believe in their technology; it will last a very long time. So these are the list prices. We have, you know, people can ask away whatever they like. That's what we're here for. And when you get the slide set, or even now, if you wish, you can give this a little scan, and then in the augmented reality, your iPhone will be able to place a salty dog in whatever location you like, and then you can walk around it, have a good look in on some of the connectors, and just see the rough sizing. And with that, I open the floor. So if there are any questions, please do ask away. When you get the slide set, there will be a case study on a variety of lights in the background, so you can see how everything works and hold up times. And as always, if you don't want to ask a question to us here, which I hope you do, please do reach out direct to myself, Paul, or even Dave, and we will do our utmost to answer this as well.
I have a quick question, Andrew.
Hi, Frank. Is it Frank?
Hi.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, just like the smaller, you know, batteries that you guys make for cameras and, you know, the smaller lights and stuff, do you guys have a plan to possibly make just a battery pack that can plug into this to extend the amount of time that the unit, you know, can run, as opposed to having to buy, you know, multiple fully functional, you know, units, you know, at that $47,000 price, and just have, like, say for example, you want, you know, to run this for twice as long. It would be basically a battery pack. That's all it is, just a battery pack that will plug into this and extend the time, you know, twice or three times. We have APC units right now that we use on Monday Night Football that you can stack up to 10 battery packs onto the main UPS unit to, you know, extend the runtime from, you know, 5 minutes all the way to an hour and 45 minutes. So I just wanted to find out if you guys had any kind of plans to introduce something along those lines.
Yes, we do. It is on the roadmap as one of the options of just doing a DC only pack. So you could look to have an umbilical cord type, but again, it's a roadmap item. But it is planned out, because I know Dave has been asked this repeatedly, not just by me, but also some of the other customers who we've spoken to. So it is something we are looking at, Frank. It's just a matter of when, because also we're just trying to finish this one off, and then we're looking at the whole ecosystem as a whole around it. And this is where the feedback from yourself and others is really key in where we drive to next on this. Right. But it'll be there, Frank.
Question I have about quietness of its cooling system.
Yes. So we've designed the air ducting system on it so that it pulls air from underneath. It then blows across all of what we say are the critical components to keep them cool, and then it exits again underneath. We do not think it's going to be louder than 30 decibels. And that is also an intelligent fan, so it'll only come on and ramp up as and when needed. So it is very quiet. We are looking at doing the ability to turn the fan off. So you could look to turn it off as and when you want for a short time period, unless the system itself said it wasn't suitable. But I think Dave will be able to explain all of this more with his ability, because he did help design everything.
Well, just quickly touching on that, yeah. So there will be multiple options for fan control. Because we know sometimes there is, the audio people want steady if there is noise, steady noise versus changing. So there'll be a fan delay mode where you can have fan completely off. You can have a fan at full speed mode where it's constant, or the dynamic fan mode where it'll change based on the load and temperature inside of the system.
Hello, Andrew. It's Peter.
Hi, Peter.
Good to connect with you again. Thanks for the presentation. Really like what you're doing with the product. I think also the concept you're just showing of distributed power, like the example with the area lights, is I think a direction that we're headed in long term. Was wondering about the recharge time.
Yeah. So recharge time from 0 to 100% is, from mains, this is around 10 hours. Now, it's not a linear recharge time, so you can get an 80% charge in 6 hours. It's always that last 20% on any battery where it suddenly slows down. However, we are playing with firmware at this time, so we think there'll be some improvements coming, which you can obviously upgrade on the system. You don't have to buy a new system. So you'll get the benefits from it, because there's a lot of smarts on this unit.
Yeah. Well, good. Thank you for that. And I guess also I'd be interested in learning more about other ways to increase duration. I think my concern from a rental perspective, not from a production perspective. So production, the illustrations are excellent. From a rental perspective, it's balancing the cost per unit versus the duration of the unit on set.
Yep.
So while it can replace my Honda 7000, my 7000 can run for 8 hours at full output.
So what
we the price. So it's an economics challenge. I think the sustainability direction is terrific, and I think the engineering and the electronics you put on here are really informative. I'm just trying to understand better as a rental house how to get over that bridge of application versus cost of acquisition.
Yeah, it comes down to the workflow change, which always has to happen, I think, when anybody moves to using any sort of battery system. So how we see it is this can enable a smaller fuel generator to be used on set. And what we would expect is that there'd be a small fleet of these on set, and they would just be charged off that generator, increasing the efficiency of the generator, and enabling it to run, cooler, quieter, because it's running in the right areas it is, which then enables that fleet to be maneuvered from where light back and just keeps going in a circular motion. It's always the problem I think we have with any sort of limited capacity equipment. You can't just put in extra energy. It has to come in some form factor, which is kind of why we were playing in the background with a lot of things under the skin, so that we can maneuver that 10 hours down to a different number. Because you got to think, when we released the VCLX, our little floor battery 15 years ago, that had a 10-hour recharge time, and it's only 520 watts. This is a completely different beast, and it's pretty much in the same time zone. So it will improve, but there has to be a workflow change or an acceptance of a different workflow, because it's not unlimited power anymore. Not if you wish to go to this sort of technology anyway.
I know, I see Dave Founders was asked about availability. So Dave, to answer your question, we're looking at having production demo units at the end of August or early September. And then we're actually going to have production units for the first orders, probably the first week of October, to start shipping. And I think Joel was asking a question about energy density of sodium versus lithium iron phosphate.
Oh, sure. So the battery module inside the unit, the energy density is 160 watt hours per liter. I believe it's watt hours per liter. compared to lithium ion, depending on the type of cells you use, that can be between 350 and 500. And then lithium iron phosphate, which is currently like 260, 275. So that's also speaks to why we've released this battery or focused on such the large form factor. Andy touched on the start of this discussion that we've been known for handheld and floor style batteries for the last 5 decades. And the reason being is that the form factor at the energy density doesn't really play in that market at the moment, or that size. So we were able to start larger where we had more room to play with on the form factor. And we do look to miniaturize this technology as we move forward. But it's not as energy dense at the moment as those other 2 technologies.
Could you address the question of sort of temperature limits?
Well, it does have a very wide temperature range in reality. So that's one of the advantages of going over to the sodium. The cell itself is very. Dave wants to jump in on this. I can see him itching.
No, I just think I didn't know if it was listed on the specs, but we spec the unit from -20 to 60 C, right, Andy?
Yeah.
That was yeah.
So that's and we guarantee that 6,000. The output across that temperature range as well. We know the cell can do more, but again, it is not the cell which is the issue. It's all of the surrounding electronics, because once you get into those extreme temperatures, there's not a lot out there bar very, very expensive military components. So we can do it, but we think -20 to +60 is a good starting point.
I think Joel, another question.
Yeah, you kind of touched on it, but you mentioned, I guess, a chain of stewardship for the cells when they need to be replaced. How does that work? And what do you guys do with the battery, the cells, when you take them back?
So they go back to a specialist recycler, which there are in both the US and Europe and other regions around the world. We're only looking at US, Europe at this time, of course. And they get fully recycled back. So all the metal is pulled back out of them. All of the sodium is reprocessed and can be used in ceramics and other materials such as roads, etc. So the actual loss is 0.0001% of material when you recycle it. And then you can just slide a new battery in, connect it up, and away you go. So it is a completely resellable system, but we don't expect that to happen.
Right, but they aren't being made into new batteries. Like once the materials are separated, they get distributed to other industries and other things, right?
They do. I mean, the nickel itself can be reused in these batteries, because the grade will still be the same. The ceramics obviously can get reprocessed. So it's it is quite a very circular environment, because you can use recycled materials to make the battery as well. So it's pretty good from that standpoint. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
What direction do you see this going in?
I personally think in 3 to 4 or 5 years, most energy storage systems will probably be sodium based, because there are many advantages to moving over to sodium, and it is catching up very quickly on the watt hours per litre that Dave spoke about earlier. You got to think 2 or 3 years ago, most sodium cells would have been at around 60, 80, 90 watt hours a litre. We know they're continuously increasing, so they are getting to the same size as lithium iron phosphate, but without any of the issues. One of the good things about using this technology, which hasn't been spoken about, it's not in the slides there, it should have been, was the actual unit itself isn't dangerous goods rated for when you're transporting it by sea or by road, which makes another good cost saving over DG9 rated lithium packs, and it enables you to use anybody to push this around. So we think we can start to look at removing dangerous goods regulations from the packs as we start to get bigger. We can foresee quicker recharge times, much quicker recharge times, I have to say, are on the horizon. The ability to output very high loads and not have any effect as such on the cycle life, whilst also maintaining that safety feature, which I think a lot of customers do like the fact there's not that risk of a cell going faulty and suddenly you have that thermal runaway, because we've all seen it on, unfortunately, cars. You know, we've seen the Teslas go up. We see the EV bikes, we see the EV cycles, and I don't know what it's like in America for this, but it makes a lot of news over here, to the point that now railways are looking to ban EV bikes and scooters from being on them, because they're just so worried something could happen. Going down this technology, it removes that worry, that concern, that insurance risk in many respects. So it's another reason why we think this is the right type of chemistry to really look at. We are obviously looking at other chemistries continuously in the background, because it would be remiss of us if we didn't. But we are trying to address a lot of concerns with this initial unit as we then start to look further afield. And I'm sure Dave's going to chip in on this one as well.
No, just really quick to touch on that, because I think one question, you know, people might have is, why don't we see these in things like cars or electric vehicles in general? And we, you know, we have been working with a number of cell suppliers for a number of technologies, as Andy has said. You know, one of the historical benefits of Anton Bauer is the ability, you know, we cycle test new technologies, new chemistries. We have an automated battery lab, which we are cycling through. And we have the historical relationships of a few decades for people like Panasonic, LG, and Samsung, which, you know, are some of the big suppliers or biggest suppliers in the lithium market. And, you know, the feedback that we're getting is the automotive industry is heavily testing sodium-based cells, sodium ion, sodium, other subchemistries. Their thing is, because the warranty is placed on electric vehicles, they need to cycle test between 3 to 5 years. So that we see it coming, but not for a couple more years, where we'll start to see or hear more about it. Until that point, it's still going to be primarily, you know, lithium ion. And I think one of the other items where, you know, it's inferred, but the availability of sodium also means the raw materials and the process to make the batteries are quite cheaper. At the moment, it is more expensive than lithium because of the adoption rate, as at the moment is low. But as we see more people use it and it becomes more widely available, the raw materials, it's like 100 to 1 compared to lithium. It's really incredible.
Yes, the chemistry mixed
Sure.
with the sodium.
It's sodium nickel chloride. So the electrolyte, the anode and cathode are a mixture of the sodium nickel, and the electrolyte is sodium chloride. It's actually a molten salt. So when it's in its solid state, it's sodium chloride, and then when it's heat up and it turns into the molten state, it allows the ions to flow. So it's the three main components are sodium, chlorine, and nickel, but combined sodium chloride to be salt.
There's one from Frank asking, with recharge time of 6.5 hours for an 80% charge, can the unit chemistry allow to be charged fast like EV cars, depending on the charger used? Yes, in short, Frank. There's always a limit to how much current you can put into a battery, and this is some of the things that we're actually looking at tweaking as well. So we do envisage it reducing as we start to move forward through iterations.
Thank you very much to our guests. Thank you, David. Thank you, Paul. Thank you very much, Andrew, for a terrific presentation. I'll look for the video to be uploaded to esta.org/YT, and watch for invitations for our future events. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Take care.